So for day 6, you guys, we're going to be looking at reform and inventions. So as the country is growing and developing and expanding, that creates some innovations, some new things that are really helping out the country's economy, but it also creates some obstacles and some problems, societal problems that reform movements look to fix. So reform means to change for the better. Okay, so go ahead and in your long-term notes packet, turn to the day 6 page on reform and inventions. The first thing we're going to look at is reform movements. So let's take a look. Education reform. So what were they fighting for? Probably obvious. They were fighting for education. So they wanted free public school for all children. So they wanted all children to be able to get an education, to read, to learn, to be able to advocate for themselves and others in society. Now, a major leader of this movement was a man named Horace Mann. So it's important to know he's the father of education, but a way to remember it is his man has 2 N's in it. So he's the father of education, but he can't even spell man right? Alright, so go ahead and highlight the word man so you remember that little memory trick. So the next movement we're going to talk about is the temperance movement, which is a ban on alcohol. Here's how you can remember this one. When people drink alcohol, some people will lose their temper, right? They'll get angry. So they have a ban on alcohol, which is called the temperance movement. So you see this group of women right here saying, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours." So a lot of women led this movement because of abuse and violence that was happening because of alcohol. Go ahead and highlight the word temper, remember that lose your temper, and the word alcohol. Alright, now the next movement is are the prison and mental illness reform movements. So what were they fighting for? This was the creation of mental hospitals so that the ill wouldn't be put in jail. So people who were mentally ill or mentally sick before this point were being put in jail, not for doing anything wrong, but for just being mentally ill. So a woman named Dorothea Dix, she fought for the rights of the mentally ill so that they would be put in hospitals instead of prison for no reason. So, again, mentally ill were put in prison, and Dorothea Dix, she tried to fix that. So the next movement we're going to talk about is the labor reform movement. Remember, like, labor means to work in a job, reform means to change for the better. So what were they fighting for? They were fighting to protect workers' rights and fighting for safe working conditions, because remember at this time there were a lot of big factories and even kids had jobs there, but there were no protections on the machines and people were getting paid really lousy wages and there were no maximum hours. None of the laws that we have today to protect people existed back then. Okay, moving on to the abolition movement. So the abolition movement, abolishing means to get rid of. It's important you understand that word. Abolishing means to get rid of. The abolition movement in particular is fighting to get rid of slavery. Now there are a couple main leaders you need to know from the abolition movement. One of them is Frederick Douglass, okay? He is an escaped slave and he writes for the North Star newspaper about his experiences. And people read those and they get inspired and motivated to fight against slavery. Go ahead and highlight the word North Star. A way you can remember Frederick Douglass is that a lot of slaves, when they escaped, they would follow the North Star in the sky to find their direction. Now, he wrote for the North Star newspaper, and he's an escaped slave. Another leader to know is William Lloyd Garrison. He is a newspaper owner, he's a white northerner, and he writes for the Liberator. So again, he's speaking out against slavery very vocally. A way you can remember this, go ahead and highlight the 2 L's in the name Lloyd. There are 2 L's, right? One of those L's stands for the name Liberator. That's his newspaper. So highlight the letter L here and the letter L in Liberator. And lastly, we have Harriet Tubman. She was a woman, a very brave woman, who led slaves to freedom in the middle of the night. So she would help them escape from the south to the north in a process of escaping called the Underground Railroad. So the last movement we're going to talk about is the women's rights movement. They were fighting for equal rights for women, including suffrage, which means the right to vote. So again, suffrage means the right to vote. Some major leaders. Sojourner Truth, this is her. She wrote a famous speech called Ain't I a Woman? where she explains how being African American and being a female has left her disadvantaged in society. Additionally, we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She organized the Seneca Falls Convention, and she wrote an interesting take on the Declaration of Independence to include women and to fight for equal rights. And lastly, we have Susan B. Anthony. She voted illegally in the election, and she's a famous speaker. Now, when they arrested her, they didn't put her in handcuffs, and she insisted that they did because she wanted to be treated just like a man would be. So, during the Industrial Revolution in the U.S., a lot of new inventions were created, which kind of streamlined processes. Let's talk about some major ones that could pop up on your STAAR. So first off, we have the cotton gin. It looks like this. Now, the cotton gin is a machine that removed seeds from cotton. So you see here the cotton balls go into the seeds. It goes to this turn thing, and the seeds are taken out, and then there's clean cotton on the other side. Now, what's the impact? It increases slavery. It's so successful that plantation owners increase slavery so they can make more money. It makes cotton profitable. Okay, our next invention are interchangeable parts. If you remember the Lego versus Play-Doh competition we did in class, that's this. So what is it? There are pieces that can be switched out just like Legos. What's its impact? It increases the speed of production. Go ahead and highlight the term speed of production. So it makes making things faster. And it also creates jobs for low-skilled workers. If all your job is to do is to put this little knob right here like that, anyone can do that, right? So it makes job opportunities a lot more welcoming to lower-skilled individuals. And next we have the steam engine. So the steam engine is an engine powered by steam, and it does something important. It allows for the creation of the locomotive and the steamboat. Okay, so what's the locomotive? It's a train powered by steam. And what is its impact? It allows for transportation to be a lot faster, and it allows for tracks to run across the country. Additionally, we have the steamboat. So the steamboat is a boat that can go up a river against the current. So steamboats are on the rivers. Now, what's the impact? It made for easier, quicker trips on the rivers like the Mississippi River, right? So during the Civil War, maybe the South would use a steamboat to get their supplies up and down the river, right? Go ahead and highlight the term Mississippi.